Welcome to Extraordinary Ability with your host, Candice Ackermann. Every episode celebrates foreign nationals with extraordinary abilities who qualify for O1, EB1, and IW visas. Learn how you may qualify, especially if you have been denied other U.S. visas. You can find this show on YouTube, LinkedIn, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on www.visalawpros.com. Now here's the host of Extraordinary Ability, Candice Ackermann.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome to our first episode of Extraordinary Ability. I'm Candice Ackermann, the founder and managing attorney of visalawpros.com. Today, we have the honor and privilege of interviewing a performing artist from Ireland who has performed in a number of esteemed movies and television shows, including Dungeons and Dragons, Allied, Vikings, and Vikings Valhalla. I'm going to introduce Jonathan East and let him tell you a little bit about himself, where he comes from, what he has been up to back in his home country, and then we will progress on from there about O1 visas, what it was like to work with my firm, and what his plans and future plans are for working in the U.S. John, please tell us about yourself.
Oh, hello. Did we have a studio audience in the countdown there? I think so. Live in front of a studio audience. This is not live, I know, but hi, hello everybody out there. Hello internet. My name's Jonathan East. People call me John, Johnny, Jono. Call me what you like, as long as it's not derogatory. Thank you, Candice. I didn't know I was on episode 1. Holy crap, that's an honor. So everybody has to either live up to my standard or absolutely use me as the bottom stepping stone and just become better. All right. So who am I? You know what? That's one of those things when you work in, I work in drama, theater, TV. I've done a bit of radio and so forth. And that's one of the things I kind of hate when a director or a producer or somebody comes and is like, can you give us a short bio on yourself? And I was like, I can talk, this type of format is perfect because being Irish, I can talk forever, but sitting down and going, right, summarize your life in one paragraph.
Well, tell us some of the highlights of the projects that you worked on that led up to some of the bigger name ones that I discussed. And then we'll obviously have to hop into Allied because the question burning on everyone's mind was, what was it like to be in a movie with Brad Pitt? But let's do some of the highlights back in Ireland first.
All right. Well, quickest background that I can do is that when I was just a young lad in school now. No, I remember when I was in what we call secondary school, you guys call high school, and I was in the fourth year, which is transition year. It is not it's not a year that you have to do. You can opt not to do fourth year in Ireland. So I think that is, but it's the equivalent of the US 10th grade, I think. And it's not a major examination year. You've had an examination year the previous year. So for some people who are a little bit younger in school, you can take that year and you can do a bit of growing up and so forth. But anyway, during this year, you do a lot of introductions to different, careers and career paths and stuff. And one of the things that we did get to do was go to the open day for a local college here in Dublin, somewhere that was just up the road from my home. And it was a place called Coláiste Dúlaig. Now, and Coláiste Dúlaig, that's Irish. That's Irish Gaelic. That means Dúlaig College, the College of St. Dúlaig, and which is actually a church that's just up the road. It's a church. It's the oldest serving church. Sorry, it's the oldest church in Dublin still doing services. So there you go. Anyway, the college was named after that place, and so I went in, and they went into the television department. And inside the television department, they had a gallery. They had a little TV studio. They had an editing suite in the back of it. And I grew up just watching TV, all the amazing American TV shows growing up in the 80s and the 90s. That was me. I was glued to the TV, and that's just what I wanted to do. So to 2 years later, I graduated secondary school, or high school to you guys. And I applied to numerous different colleges. But that's the one I wanted to go to. It was the one where I'd seen 2 years previous. I saw the place. And you know what? I did 3 years there. I did a higher national diploma there. I didn't want to leave. It was a higher national diploma in communications and media production, basically documentary making. And I did that. And in third year, so we did television, radio, and photography. And in third year, you got to specialize in one of those. So I specialized in television, and I sub-specialized in editing, because 25 years ago, I was the geeky Stephen King kid in the school that the nerds didn't even want to hang out with, right? So confidence was not a thing. So I really thought, do you know what I want to do? I want to work on TV, but, I don't want to deal with people. I want to work in a dark room, me and a computer, and I'll talk to the director, and that'll be it, and I'll make TV that way. And so that's a career I chased for a long time. And then when I got my honors degree in the British Midlands, in a city called Wolverhampton. It's near Birmingham. It's in the Midlands. So that's where I did my final year. And I have this amazing degree title. And my title of my honors degree is I have a Bachelor of the Arts honors degree in video. Now, for any millennials out there, or anybody born after 2000, you won't know what the feck that is. But when I was graduating, a lot of people, if I said that to people of my generation from the 80s and 90s, they would think that I had a degree in a VHS cassette. But video is very important. Actually, video is more important today, even though people don't realize it, because that particular end of the industry is what everybody uses for streaming these days. That's all about the video. And it's all to do with the technicalities of frame rates, pixel resolutions, video size, standard definition, 720p, 1080, 4K, all that type of 6K, 8K. Cameras are going up to 6 and 8K these days. So all of that type of stuff, and then the frame rates. And then one of the things I had to learn was the differences between US, UK, and Irish video frame rates at the time, because back in the day we had on standard definition we had PAL and PAL on VHS and NTSC on VHS. Now this is all technical stuff that I had to know, and I still have to know it. Still stuck in my brain. But NTSC, one of the first standards, comes from the Americans. It's National Television Standards Committee, or as we used to know it, never twice the same color. And then when the UK updated that a little bit more, they created the PAL system, and PAL stands for Phased Alternate Line, or as we called it, Pictures at Last. And then, not to be outdone, the French had to update that again, and they came up with this whole other PAL system called CCAM. Don't ask me to go into that. That's nonsense. So, but the frame rates and all sorts of stuff. So we had to learn, film is 24. NTSC is 2997, PAL is 25, and then digital, which is what we do today, whatever it is to do with the maths, it's 23.976. So good luck remembering all those numbers. I feel like I should be talking to Neil deGrasse Tyson about video and frame rates and stuff like that. Anyway, I did all that. That was all to do with getting my first job in London, and I worked in visual effects, and I worked in visual effects for years, which brought us up to 2007. See, I can talk.
Go
What's
ahead,
your question?
viewers. What's the area of your extraordinary ability?
My area of extraordinary ability. So yeah, back in 2007, I came out of working in video and stuff like that in London. Very unimpressed with the wages and the cost of living in London. And to be quite honest, the social welfare back in Ireland would give you more in your pocket for being at home than I was earning for doing 12-hour shifts, breaking my nuts in London. So I came home and decided I'm going to rethink. At the same time, my mother was like, why don't you've always been a performer, but that was only at home. not outside, but so I saw. I was looking at the drama departments and stuff like that, and I went, I don't want to really wear black and think about my feelings and all that nonsense. But I did see one class which was by stunt coordinator Paul Burke. He was a fight director, fight master, and he's in Atlanta, and now he's very successful. And he was teaching this thing called stage combat. And so I went to stage combat and started to learn that. And I was just like, oh, you get to do theater and you get to play with swords. So that's where my extraordinary ability days that I'm going into the US with, that's where they started. That was 2007. So what's that? 16 years ago now. And in and out of all the other things that I did, I went back to video. I worked in Ireland in video, worked in London in video, came home again. And immediately, as soon as I got back from London the second time, I rang Paul and I said, hey, man, are you doing any more of those classes? I want to keep going. I really enjoyed it. And then I did that. But at the same time, we had the global crash. So I moved to Canada. I lived in Toronto for 2 years. I worked in video in Toronto because I had to. It was my skill set. I had to earn money. But then after my visa ended, I came home. So then the first thing that happened when I came home was I went on a tour of Scottish castles with the girl I was seeing at the time. Kind of going, well, what am I going to do now? Holy crap. And but got back in touch with Paul and the guys here. And I said, well, hey, you're still doing classes. I know I've been away for a couple of years. What's the crack? And Paul had been hired on the TV show Vikings by fight master Richard Ryan, who was the fight director for Vikings. And Paul was chatting to me and he was just, well, what did you do? So when I was in Toronto, I kept my skills up with Rapier Witt and Dan Levinson in Toronto doing sword work and stuff. So he asked me, and I also got my first stunt gig in Toronto with Kevin Robinson, who was doing some non-union documentary style stuff and web series. And I got my first stunt performance was on a small web series called Versus Valerie. And they needed the girl, the lead in that, she's 6'1", and her male co-star was 6'3". So he'd found a double for the girl, but he hadn't found a guy. So he needed this height difference. So Ann Potter was a performer in Toronto. She got to double the girl playing Valerie. And then I got to double the guy. So we did this. It was a knockoff Mortal Kombat scene on a green screen. It was pretty cool for the time. It was a martial arts scene. We choreographed it in Kevin's kitchen. We went down to the studio. We shot it 3 or 4 hours. Had to do it barefoot. The floor was concrete. I had no skin left on my feet at the end of the day. But and then through those guys, I met some other people, did some other non-union stuff in Toronto. So when I got back, I was telling Paul this in Ireland, and he said, send me a video of what you got. He gave it to Richard Ryan, and Richard Ryan offered to bring me in for an audition for Ensemble. So the first episode of Vikings that I'm in is season 2, episode 1, Brothers War. And if you watch the episode, you can see like my arm, corner of my ass. I'm like at the very back of the shot. There's one shot where I fight Donal Logue, lovely guy, and a double axe on Donal Logue, and I think you just see my 2 arms, and that was pretty much it. But I kept going. It was only dailies. But then at the end of season 3, I was lucky enough to be around about the same height and hair color of Clive Standen, who was Rollo in Vikings. Now I have photos of me and Clive is 2 years younger than me, but honestly, he looks like my dad. Clive is a bear of a man. And he would do push-ups and stuff between takes to get the veins going, the old Wolverine, Hugh Jackman thing. There's pictures of me standing next to him. And honestly, it looks like I am his son and he's dad. Because I am not a beefy person. I'm an endomorph, a very slender person. But from a distance, jumping backwards off a 30-foot siege tower into a river and nobody could tell the difference. And that was my first big stunt. Was the siege tower was on fire. And the story goes, Rollo gets knocked in the head by someone. He falls backwards off the siege tower into the Seine. Now, the Seine for us was a river in Ashford, County Wicklow in Ireland. I had an 8 foot by 8 foot by 8 foot deep area to fall into in the river. So as I come off, but I can't see where I'm going. So I kind of have to gauge where I'm going, fall backwards. And that particular stunt, that stunt gave me quite a decent amount of kudos with the older stunt guys who'd been around the block, and some of the younger stunt guys who'd been there. They were all looking at that going, okay, fair play. Did 2 takes, burst every capillary in my back because there was no stunt pads. It was waist high, topless, tattoos showing. So there's photos, because as soon as I got back to get the blood and all that stuff, the fake blood washed off me, the makeup artist, Kira Scannell, she was taking pictures of me and going, oh, this is a great reference, because my entire back was bruised, and it took a week. It went from red to yellow to purple, all the different colors of the rainbow before it got better. And from then on, the coordinator at the time, Franklin Henson, he gave me a contract full time. So from the last 2 episodes of Vikings season 3, season 4, season 5, and season 6, which were all 20 episodes, I am in or was present for every single one of those, which is basically like, that's, as the guys say, that's like winning the stunt lotto, being core team on a massive TV show for 3.5 seasons. So I was on it for 5 seasons. I was day player for season 2 and 3, but then season 4, 5, and 6, I was extremely lucky. Season 5 and 6, Franklin handed it over to Richard Ryan, and then we took a break. And then when Richard got Valhalla, which is the sequel series with Netflix, he took me on board there straight away, and I did 2 seasons of that. But then that brings us to during, was it season 5 or season 6? Franklin got a little film called Allied, and needed 2 guys of equal build and size. So there's another Irish stunt performer, redheaded chap here, DC, and we were very similar in build. So they needed 2 Nazi SS officers to be bodyguards for a ambassador during the movie. Now, I don't want to spoil the movie too much, but the ambassador dies. And like all roles I play in movies, so do the bodyguards. So the scene that you've been alluding for me to talk about is so simple. It was a big moment for me, right? But I am a very I'm a very loyal person in regards to who I'm listening to on set and stuff. So I'm always kind of keeping, well, where's the coordinator? What's the coordinator doing? Where is he? Oh, is he talking to me? Is that something I need to know? So anyway, the scene is I come down the stairs, myself and DC in tandem. The ambassador's in front of us, and he does a speech, and Brad Pitt and Marion Cotillard are watching the speech, and then at a certain point, explosion goes off outside, and they flip over a table. There's 2 Bren guns under there, or Sten guns, and they go bracket, 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 bracket. So I am the idiotic SS officer that goes,
what's that outside the window? Is there something happening?
So, and as that happens, DC on my right side, he gets shot by Brad Pitt. And I go,
yeah? Oh, my buddy's being shot. Who shot him?
And I look at Brad Pitt and I go,
was it you?
And I bring my gun to bear. And as soon as I do that, Brad goes and kills me. So, and I have to take the hit, and I fall backwards, being, riddled with bullets, and fall over. So that was my interaction with Brad Pitt. So we did a couple of takes of that, and I think on take 2, like Bob Zemeckis, who I was more excited to meet than Brad Pitt, to be honest, because Bob Zemeckis is the director of Back to the Future, one of my all-time favorite film trilogies. So I got to shake hands and got direction, simple direction off Bob Zemeckis. Unbelievable. Couldn't believe there's a picture of the stunt team, Franklin, Brad, Marianne, and Bob Zemeckis. I am standing next to Bob Zemeckis in a Nazi uniform with the biggest smile on my face. It's kind of embarrassing. But yeah, we did that. And when after they yelled cut and I'd been shot, I heard this voice, and it was somebody shouting at me, "Good hit, good hit!" And I looked up, and the first person I looked at was Franklin, because it was like, well, he's the boss. Make sure, am I getting notes from the boss? And Franklin was like doing this. Brad Pitt, you know, he's mouthing, "Brad Pitt's talking to you." And I'm like, huh? Oh, Brad Pitt. And he's just like, "Good hit, man. Yeah, good hit." And I was like, "Thank you. Glad you're happy." You know? And that was it. That was my interaction. That was my interaction with Brad Pitt. You know what? He was lovely. If somebody said something to him, he was always calm. He was always quiet. He was one of those actors who his standby chair is in a different area. You know, it's a lot of the bigger giant names that I've worked with. You know, they'll have their private area, so the day playing actors will have kind of the actors area, and that's where they sit and do remember their lines. But someone at Brad's level, they will be in a slightly different area. So if they want to socialize, they can socialize. But if they want to go and have quiet time, they go and have quiet time and consider what they do. So that's what Brad would do. And anytime someone would come up to him to say hello, or, you know, quietly fangirl or fanboy out, he would go very nicely, "Oh, thank you very much, thank you." And then he would disappear from the set. So it's like, if someone like that is on set, if they talk to you, they talk to you. Don't go chasing them, because you'll generally chase them off the set. It was the same with, I worked with Liam Neeson for a day on Marlowe here in Ireland, and lovely man, so tall. And of course, being a big science fiction fan myself, oh my God, I was on set with Qui-Gon Jinn. You know, so, and but myself and the other actors, when we would talk, we wouldn't ignore Liam, but I wouldn't directly go and ask him questions unless he spoke to us, you know. And but he did. So we had an interaction with Liam, and he was very nice. And because he's an older gentleman now, so, and he's 6'4", he used to be a boxer. So when he stands, he kind of slumps. But as soon as they're like standby, ready for action, stands up straight, full 6'4", bumps. There you go. That's why he's paid the big bucks. Presence. So yeah, I dragged Liam Neeson across the floor on Marlowe, and yeah. So that's just some of the stuff I was on. Most recently, the biggest thing, it's currently still in the cinema and some multiplexes, I think, is Dungeons and Dragons. And I got to double Chris Pine, and because I am a huge geek, I did have to go and get a Chris Pine action figure, because it's the closest I'll ever get to having my own action figure. But that's the costume that I wore. I wore that costume with his little mandolin and stuff. So and people was like, "What's Chris Pine like?" And of course, I was like, "Oh my God, I'm doubling Captain Kirk from the new movies." I was on set. We were getting ready to do one of the big gags, which was there's when Edgin dives out the window with Jonathan, the Aarakocra. So I got to dive out that big window, and that big window was I think it was an 8 to 10 foot circular window. It was made of sugar glass and biscuit foam, and the bottom of it had a lip. So myself and the Bulgarian stunt girl doubling Michelle Rodriguez, we had to make sure that Clayton, who was in the Aarakocra animatronic head and stuff like that, make sure that, because he was in fake feet, and because we were diving full body out, he had to have the fake feet on and everything. So he was going backwards. He couldn't see where he was going. So we had to make sure that we lifted him up and over that kind of 8-inch lip at the bottom of the window, So that was the pressure for us. The pressure for us was clear the window, because that window was an 8-hour reset. Right, so we dive out the window. It's a 2-story dive out. There's a stunt box rig out the window. 8-hour reset. So it's like there's a bit of pressure on, because if we fuck that up, they got to shut that set down, rebuild that window overnight, and then we come back the next day to shoot it. So there was a lot of pressure to do one and done for that one. Now, spoiler alert, we got it. We did it in one. So while we were setting up the box rig, Chris was walking across the studio to do some setup shots before I came in and did the dive out the window. And his assistant was walking by, and he asked the question to the assistant. So who's doing is Ryan, who was the other double? Is he doing the gag? And he said, oh no, there's a new guy, Jonathan. He's into W. And he goes, oh, where is he? So Chris came over and he said, give me a fist bump and said, thanks very much for doing this, man. I was like, no problem. Love it. Thank you. And that was it. That was my interaction with Chris Pine. There was no pictures. There was no, standing there shooting the breeze with him or anything like that. But, at their level, I figure for him to come over and even just to do a fist bump and go, thanks very much. I thought that was pretty decent of him. He could completely ignore those people at that level. Can completely ignore you if they want to. So I thought that was pretty decent of him. So that's well behaved for a superstar of that level.
I just want to introduce the viewers to a little bit about the O1 visa process for those who don't know, or for those who are keen on exploring getting an O1 visa. So for those who are not familiar, an O1 is for a person of extraordinary ability. John has already successfully garnered his O1 visa for extraordinary ability in the arts as a performing artist. And I very much enjoyed hearing a lot about, how he achieved acclaim in his field. Man, and I hope everyone else has. But basically, you have to meet a list of 3 criteria, 3 out of 6, that shows you have prominence in your field, which he clearly does. And for anyone interested, you can visit John's IMDb profile online. If you don't know about Vikings or Vikings Valhalla, it was a top 10 Netflix show, and Allied starred Brad Pitt, and he has other accolades to his name. But John, if you could share with everyone what it was like, a little bit about the process and working with my firm. Did it meet your expectations? What expectations did you have? What was it like working with my firm? And then share with us in the last little bit of time that we have left, some of your upcoming plans and projects once you make it stateside using your O1 that we got you.
Cool. So I talk for another half hour about absolutely no. So one of the things, I mentioned before, my swordmaster and the guy who got me into stunts in Ireland, Paul Burke. Paul is an amazing guy, and he moved over to the States. Now he did it. He was lucky. He met his wife Nora and the 2 wonderful kids and stuff like that. So he went over with the marriage green card, because Nora was living here. They got married here long before they decided to move back to the States. So that wasn't kind of his intention. But one of my other colleagues, Keith Ward, who I worked with on Vikings as well, Keith decided that he wanted to go over years ago. So Keith was the first of one of our team to kind of look into this. And Keith used another firm over in LA, which I got in touch with. And the person I spoke to, I'm not going to mention names, but they did a phone consult. And you know what? To be honest, I wasn't impressed with how I was spoken to. I wasn't. It was more like, oh, another one of these guys. Oh, what makes you think you're so special? Kind of got the feeling of that from them. So a couple of the other guys who've been looking into it were mentioned. So Adam and Adam Bean and Michael Redmond had come across yourself. And they'd said, well, yeah, I also spoke to the LA team, and we've gotten a nice response from this girl in New York. So I was like, well, okay, I'm going to contact this girl in New York and do the consult. So we did the consult and we had a chat. And because the other thing as well is I thought I was being clever. And I knew you had to get 10 letters of recommendation. And there is so much, there's so many websites out there. There's so much information. There's so many websites trying to get your money, and so many firms and stuff like that through websites that they give you a little bit of information. But a lot of little bits of information. So trying to get it all together in the right format. And the guys who'd been over to the States and been successful did their best to give me information. But I found it, both overwhelming and underwhelming at the same time. So I thought I'd be clever. I thought, you know what, I'm going to go and get the letters first and then go find someone to help me get it through. Unfortunately, what I missed out on, and what anybody listening should think about, is I had letters of recommendation from former bosses in the film industry, but I also had friends and people who knew me in America, police officers, former police officers from New York, from Miami-Dade. I knew Vickers and stuff like that, and people who would give me, who gave me glowing reports and whatever. And I collected 10 letters. Believe you me, these letters take forever, right? Because you're asking people to sign their name to something that they may not really understand, and you're trying to get them to do you a big favor. So collecting those letters and getting them to send them out and get them sent back, or handing them to someone and wording them, nightmare. Okay, so I think I wasted 2 years getting those letters. And then when I contacted the guy in LA, all but one of those 10 letters that I'd spent 2 years trying to get people to sign, he poo-pooed. Right? He was like, I've read them all. They're useless. You've got one good letter in there. And I'm like, it took me so long to get these letters. Holy crap. And but there was no positivity in his reaction. He just went, they're all nonsense. You have to go and do them again. And no positivity on, well, if you come to my firm and, it'll cost this and we'll write them for you and what have you. So when I got in touch with Candice, I'd already had that negative experience on the telephone, and I spoke to Candice and we had a wonderful chat. Very much me doing exactly what I'm doing now, where Candice stays quiet, gives me a little bit of advice, and I just rabbit on. But that's the thing I learned. So in regards to the original 10 letters, those 10 letters have to be, if you're in the arts like me, they have to be from colleagues that you have worked with, people who already have a decent name in the industry, that are happy to put their name to a letter of recommendation. Now, the letter of recommendation can be written by them. However, there's a certain format that Candice and her law firm know inside out, active front, upside down, which until you see, you're like, oh, I had no idea that was it. How it's worded is so important as well, to be accepted by United States immigration. I think one of the things we discussed was that the firm in LA, they were going to put me down as a stunt performer, which would pigeonhole me into a very slim area. And with my skill set here, with my other qualifications, within the stunt community, there's an expanded area that that I want to be able to obtain work in. As a stunt performer, that leads into I teach sword and unarmed and fighting. That's considered part of the stunt department. Then you also have a lot of second unit directors today, especially in action movies. They're stunt performers. So second unit director and stunt coordinators kind of go together. And then if you're listed as a stunt performer, and then somebody says, I want you to coordinate for this day, I need you to take over for me because you've been on the show for so many days, weeks, months, whatever, the show well, I want you to take the day for me because I need to go do a different project or something, or I'm going to hand it off. If you're listed as just a performer, you're going to get pigeonholed. You cannot take that job or that advancement. All you can do is that job. So one of the great things when I was speaking to Candice, and one of the things we discussed was, well, how can we word it in such a way that I am open to stunt fight direct in theater, stunt fight direct on set, and also if I get an opportunity to be an assistant coordinator or even a stunt second unit director. How do we do that? So one of the wordings that we came up with was stunt artiste, which is a little bit different. So, and Candice came up with a definition of stunt artiste. So if someone comes up and says, well, hang on a second, that's not a fight direction, that's not a stunt department thing, I can go and say, well, no, Visa says I can be a stunt artiste. And within the stunt artiste definition, there's these kind of subcategories. So that allows me to, when I hit the States, it allows me to go for job opportunities that could have been closed to me had I just gone for just stunt performer, and so that was a big plus with dealing with Candice and the Ackermann law firm. So those 10 letters and the wording of how those letters, because paragraph 1 is the person you're talking about, their credits. Paragraph 2 is their recommendation on you, the applicant. And then paragraph 3 is really short. It's a summary. But the wording of, like, if you say fight director, the person in the Immigration Bureau, they're not going to see that as a stunt thing. They're going to go fight director. That's something different. And you're going to have to get 10 more letters from 10 other people to talk about fight direction. Or if you do second unit, I'm a second unit director, brilliant second unit director. If you don't say stunt second unit director, they're going to go, well, I need 10 more letters to recommend you as a second unit director. So, having putting the correct words in the right sentences and stuff like that, that's what Candice does, and that's what you're hiring Candice to do. Yes, the one thing for a lot of people out there, it does cost more, right? There's a base price, and then there's the letter writing price. Put it to you this way: if you don't spend the extra, you're going to spend it in time. So how much is your time? Consider I started the idea of collecting letters and thinking about taking the opportunity to move to the States. I made that decision and started down the road 6 years ago. I wasted 2 years of that time chasing letters that I didn't really understand. And I had a friend of mine in Las Vegas who's a patent clerk. She was helping me write them and stuff like that. And they were legalese. They were written legalese, but not in the Immigration Bureau legalese. And that's what you're hiring Candice to do. So if you're getting the extra stuff, if you want to save yourself a few years, yeah, you're going to have to spend the extra. There's another problem that I came across that I'll touch on. But if there's a question, I'll stop rabbiting for the moment.
Oh, no, I was just going to say that, well, thank you very much for the kind words. And just to interject for 1 minute, it's a pet peeve of mine when clients believe that they have to write their own letters. Part of my fee, which I think is middle of the road, it's not the highest, it's not the lowest, but I draft all of my own cases and all of my own letters. So when a client retains me to handle an O1 case, I'm doing all the drafting because, as you astutely said, the language needs to explain, it needs to be drafted in a particular way that hits all the legal points. It's actually legal work drafting those letters because you need the content to make sure that it addresses hits the legal parameters that are required to secure the status. So I draft all of my own letters and I don't allow clients to do the work for which they're paying me to do. So that's an important point as well.
Listen to the lady, guys. Listen to her, because that if I'd have known that when I started 6 years ago, I'd probably already be in the States, right? So the delays, the reason why it took so long for me is also, I was lucky enough to be, when I started down the road, I was looking at it as during the break in filming on Vikings, I would head to the States. But I was lucky enough to have those full-time jobs. Like when we shot Vikings 5 and 6, I think did we shoot them back to back? It was like 48 weeks, anyways, a full year work, you know. So I wasn't in too much of a rush to go over at that time. But the gap between Valhalla and Vikings, there was a whole 12 months period where there was nothing really shooting. Did a couple of gigs here and there, but really it's famine or feast for what we do. And that was the kind of, just before Valhalla started shooting, that was the time where I went, you know what, there needs to be a backup. The Irish film industry is very small, it's very insular. You know, there's only so much work, and quite an awful lot of decent performers here. The skill set in Ireland has jumped massively in the last 10 years. So whereas like 20 years ago, 30 years ago, the British stunt coordinators would come in and they wouldn't really hire Irish. They'd hire the Irish just to bump up the numbers at the very bottom of the pile. They'd bring their own lads in because the British had more experience than the Irish guys. Our Irish stunt performers were only doing small gigs here and there. So, you know, so they'd bring the Brits in, they'd kind of do the big jobs. And we never really got on top of that because we just didn't have the experience. The older guys, they got on the big movies, but they were always in the ensemble. You know, the British stunt guys would always come in and they were the core team. So Vikings and Richard Ryan hiring us was really a big moment for Paul, Keith, myself, Michael Redmond and all them to be on the core team of a number one TV show, because in the States it went out on the History Channel, and in America it was actually a bigger show than it was over here because they sold it to Amazon first, really before streaming became a big thing. So not an awful lot of people saw it here initially because you know, small little tiny country off in the North Atlantic. You know, we're always a couple of years behind, not in the knowledge of the stuff that's out there, but in technology coming in and being accessible. We know it exists and we cry that America has it and Britain has it, but we're such a small economy. It's not the best thing for companies to be investing in upgrading stuff here, because we're only a population in the Republic of Ireland. Because don't forget, there's two countries on the island of Ireland. There's the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland. And in the Republic, there's about 4.5 million people. We're only 4.5 million of us. But there's 70 million of us out there in the world. So with all of that kind of, you know, you think about all of that type of stuff. So I was looking to go over years ago. So save yourself the time in years by consulting with Candice first. Even if you talk to Candice and then you don't talk to her for 6 months, she won't cry. She'll come back to you and go, please hire me. But and then you go, you know what, that's the best option, and you do. But yeah, so that's the thing. So talk to Candice, get your consult, do that, and have your questions ready as well, because there's nothing like ringing up and going, hey, I'd like to do a thing, and Candice tells you all the things she thinks, but it may not be pertinent to exactly the road that you want to take. So for me, Candice finally got we got the ball rolling. And there's one thing that I came a cropper that I'd like to mention here, that if anybody else is listening to, and that is, Candice, you'll remember back that when you first drafted my letters of sponsorship, okay, which is another aspect of it. So you're going to go over to the States from wherever you're going, but you need a company within the United States that's operating within the United States to be your inverted commas sponsor, right? And there's no way of getting around this. Now, you could have a family member do it, I presume, but or a family's company do it, but they're responsible for you. Now, as I mentioned, my swordmaster coordinator, Mr. Burke, we had listed him, and I was ignorant of the whole situation. And it was one of the things, even though the guys were giving me advice and I was listening to the advice and so much information and so many pieces of paper, I missed the fact that if an individual like Paul was to sponsor me in, I could not be hired as me. They would have to hire Paul, and he would sublet me out, and then they would pay Paul, and Paul would have to pay me. And that changes Paul's business from being an independent operator of just him to having to get employee insurance and all types of stuff like that. So had known of them, but I didn't really know their role in the whole situation. That is the Protea group. All right. So there's Paloma Bilson and the Protea group. Their offices based in there's 3 different offices they have around the United States, but their main one I dealt with was in California. And that was another thing that cost me an extra bit of money, obviously, because Candice is an attorney. So when she writes something and it's something new, you do have to pay for that. So we had drafted the stuff incorrectly, and that was not Candice's fault. That was my lack of knowledge. So we had to redraft that for the Protea group, and I had to get in touch with Protea to get they know what they're doing. This is their business, is to be a business for people like me.
To be an agent
and a sponsor for you to come into the country. So the way that works out is that they will also, once I get over to the States and set myself up, they act as a kind of tax broker as well. So they help pay your taxes and all that type of stuff. So, and they take a percentage. So you can pay them a fee. I believe it's like you can pay them for 3 years. You can pay them, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's like so many thousands of dollars, maybe $7,500 for the 3 years, right? So it's $2,500 a year to deal with your taxes, or they take a percentage of what you earn. Right now, working in the film industry, that's a delicate balance for me. You could do really, really well one year, but terribly another year. It's famine or feast. So now I've opted for the percentage with them, and that can be up to 10% of your income. But that's just the same as paying an accountant to do your taxes and stuff like that. I pay an accountant here in Ireland when I run my business, my stunt business here in Ireland, and in the times where it is quiet, like this year is very quiet for us, for my team anyway. It is I'm paying myself and the accountant. That is it. That's my outgoings, So, and you're always looking, when's the next gig? Oh my God, I need to pay my accountant just so I can have my company. Because dealing with companies here in Ireland in the Republic of Ireland is very different to the States. The laws are very different. Taxes are very different here than in the States. So, if you're listening from America and you think, oh, it's nothing to close down and set back up, very different here. The laws are different. So anyway, that rewrite cost me a bit of extra money. So make sure that you know for a fact who your sponsor is, and shout out to Protea for existing. Okay.
Yes.
They do exist. That's their business. That's how they make money. They make money by you making money in the United States. So they're happy to take you on as a client. So that was another thing that I came a cropper for when I came to this, and that did cost me an extra bit of cash. Candice wasn't too sorry for me. She's making money out of that. But for anybody out there, it mounts up. It starts to mount up. So it's not a cheap endeavor. So make sure that when you're going over, that you do have a plan.
Thank you so much, John. We're going to wrap up here, but I do want to just throw in that every case is case by case. So whereas we can sort of discuss the broad brushstrokes of the O1 process, I want to encourage anybody interested in exploring the process further to go to my website, www.visalawpros.com. You can schedule an appointment there. You can send me a brief little note to see if it's worth scheduling an appointment. And I have to review everybody's credits and bios on a case-by-case basis. And I do want to thank you so very much, John, for your time and for edifying all of us on who you are, what you do, what it was like working with my firm. And this has really been a lot of fun. And thank you for being my first guest on Extraordinary Ability. And hopefully you'll watch the other episodes of everyone else coming down the pike.
I got to see how everybody did after me, Do I have to come back and be better again?
Thank you so very much. And see you all again for the next episode. Bye-bye.
You've been tuning into Extraordinary Ability with your host, Candice Ackermann. Learn how you may qualify for O1, EB1, NIW visas, especially if you have been denied other U.S. visas. Please visit www.visalawpros.com to contact us and for other episodes. Thank you for your positive feedback, comments, questions, and for sharing this show with others.